Welcome to Constelación, founding a bilingual magazine. I will be your interviewer slash host for this. My name is Valerie Valdez. I am the author of Chilling Effect and Prime Deceptions, two found family space opera novels, as well as some short fiction and poetry. But enough about me. Let us move on to our super awesome people, editors, founders. I'm so excited today. I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves. We are going to start with Coral Alejandra Moore. Please introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am Coral. I was originally only a science fiction and fantasy writer with several short stories published. And then over this last year, some people got pandemic puppies. I got a pandemic magazine. It's the same. It's the same, really. So Eliana and I met each other at last year's Flights of Foundry, and we decided we wanted to start a magazine, and here we are. I will put the link in the chat and take it over. Eliana, you do a little intro while I do that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eliana González Ugarte. I am from Asunción, Paraguay. And like Coral said, same thing. I was just a writer. I wrote short stories, mostly in Spanish. And last year in the Flights of Founder, we started Constelación. So now I am the co-editor along with her.
Yay! All right, so we have only an hour. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dive into the questions that we have. And at the end, towards the end rather, I'll start taking questions from the audience. So feel free to drop them into the Discord. We are in Toast B if you need to find us. And so let's get started. All right, so what prompted your decision to start Constelación magazine? Whoever wants to go first, but otherwise I can start calling on people.
Okay, I'll start with that one because mine is a bit more personal. I got really mad in January last year. I think it was January when the whole thing with American Dirt started making the rounds. I got mad because I felt like there was more that we could do, like as a community, to start uplifting Latino voices. I know some people did do a lot for it, and I was like, well, how can I help? What can I do? Like, everyone feels a bit powerless when you're fighting forces that are a lot bigger than you. So I kind of got the idea, well, I can maybe publish stuff. I can read stories. I can do something about that. But I kind of just let it sit there because like I didn't know anyone. I felt like, what can I honestly really do? Like, I need to get someone to help me with this. Like, how do you even start? Like, there was not a lot I could do alone. So then I met Coral in the Flights of Foundry Con last year, like we mentioned. And then it wasn't nebulous actually when the idea just kind of like from a conversation in one of the after parties or something. Well, why isn't there a bilingual magazine in Spanish and English? And he's like, yes. Well, why? Why isn't there? And I was like, well, yeah. I also thought that there should be one. And then I'm gonna hand it to Coral because she's the one who took the next step, the most relevant one.
I don't know about the most relevant, but yeah, we were in the same room at the Nebulas in one of their Zoom rooms, and basically that started the idea percolating. I had been kind of wanting to sort of start a magazine for a while. I'd been working with a few different magazines. I've been working with Lightspeed and Uncanny and Strange Horizons, doing things like submissions reading and interviews and stuff like that, just trying to be involved a little behind the scenes to figure out, if I really wanted to do this. Great idea. And then the Nebulas happened, and I was like, wow, this is a great idea. I think I can do this. And then I knew Eliana had been in the same room that I was in, so I sent her a message on Twitter, and I was just like, hey, do you want to talk to me about this thing? You don't have to agree to help or anything, but what do you think? And she was like, I was thinking the same thing. And it just kind of happened from there. Everything that we've done now is a result of, those initial conversations, which is really kind of amazing.
It is. It's so cool. And so leading into the next question then, so how did the idea for the magazine evolve? You started with just kind of a seed of something. What was involved with coming up with the magazine's identity and all that?
So the name, I think, was the first thing we thought about, because that was the most important part. Like, we were thinking names that could be easily read in English and Spanish. I think one of the ones that we thought was Candela, because it's fire and light, and it's candela, like it's a measurement of light in English, and candela is like a light or torch or beacon or whatever in Spanish as well. And then we went from there, but of course, I mean, it was more like of a literary magazine name, and then we kept thinking about it's speculative fiction, so something that goes more in tone with that, and just throwing out ideas, and it was actually going to be called Constellation first, just in English. But then we decided on Constelación. It's also similar, both words are similar. So once we had the name, it was just building the identity around that theme, which worked perfectly because like we found so many connections between each other, and like it was just a way of like giving it an identity that worked both thematically and also visually, which was which was super important for us at the get-go. Like we were always serious about making it as pretty as possible and giving art a big protagonism in the magazine as well.
Yeah. Coral?
I don't think I have anything to add to that. I think I think maybe our first meeting actually talked about the names. And I think as soon as we hit on Constellation, we were like, yes. And then it took a little while longer till we decided to go with only the Spanish version. We had originally, either wanted to go with Constellation / Constelación, or, do it two different ways in English and Spanish. And then we decided, no, let's stick with it one way. That way we can have kind of one unified logo and kind of embrace our Spanglish at the same time.
Oh, for
and
sure.
also the identity of the magazine, story-wise, like we always knew we wanted it to be very focused on Latin American writers. Since it's bilingual, also we wanted to try to get half and half, like stories that were originally written in Spanish, then translated to English, and like that was from the get-go. Like there isn't a lot that has changed since the original idea, because we were very sure of what we wanted, thankfully, and we both agreed on it. Like that was one of the most wonderful things about meeting Coral. I think that we just clicked and we both had this North Star that was like, yes, that's our direction. That's where we're going.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. And so you each brought different aspects of yourselves and your background to this. So what did you bring from your personal experiences and your background to the process of starting the magazine? Yeah, I'll start with Coral on this one.
Okay. I think what I brought specifically was more of the speculative fiction magazine behind the scenes stuff. Like I had been a submissions editor at a few places. I had done some of the work and seen some of the work in the background of how to do that stuff. And I have very strong organizational tendencies. So I'm always the one fixing up the Google Drive and whatever, and organizing the files and making sure all the emails get to the people that they need to get to and all that stuff. And I think that's particularly the strengths that I bring.
I think she's being humble. She's also like this creative powerhouse. She just doesn't want to say that. I think I worked as a magazine editor for 5 years, but it was like a completely unrelated topic. It was fashion magazines, mostly here in Paraguay. So I kind of knew like the processes that go into a magazine, especially in making it work as a whole. Like you have these different articles, and you have these different stories in this case, and you try to make it work as this thing that has one single identity. So I kind of knew the process of that. That was print, so it was even worse. And I knew a little about web design, and I was very I've always been very interested in graphic design and everything, so I kind of just learned to do that myself for the things that I wanted to do in the past. So I was very adamant about working the visual part of the magazine as well, trying everything to have cohesion, at least, like everything to look like it belongs to the same thing. Like not, I think it's something that could be overlooked when you're doing a literary magazine, because that's not the most important issue, I guess. The stories are technically, but we're building a thing here. It's not just publishing stories. So that was my take on it.
Now it's you who's being humble. Everything that is pretty and beautiful about the website is 100% Eliana. Like I don't care what font this is person. And she's like, no, it has to be 100% this thing, and this has to look like this. And everyone has said how beautiful the website is, and that is 100% her. That's not me. I'm just behind going, yeah, that's pretty.
I love Eliana when you said that. It's like, I don't care what the font is. And she's like, horrorizada. Like, oh my God. Are you oh,
We
the
have this debate
vapors.
like once a month. Like, I'm like, I don't really care. And she's like, no, it's very important. I'm like, all right, if you say so.
Oh no.
And line
No, but
spaces.
it
Oh
is
my God,
beautiful.
that's.
I know, but that's good though, because like you said, if one of you has the kind of organizational chops and the other one has the more artistic thing in hand, that it's like a perfect division of labor. So even if you have crossover between the two of you, it's still awesome that you each have your strengths then that you're pulling from for this. So and sort of speaking sort of strengths, I guess we'll go into the next question. What sorry, how do your personal tastes influence what you publish or choose for the magazine as you're putting this together?
Coral?
You want me to go first? Okay. So this was one of the really, really interesting things that I didn't realize would happen probably. That when we started going through the submissions for the first issue, that it was very apparent that we had very different taste in what we like for stories. So like we had this relatively small pile at the end of stories that someone liked a lot. And when we started comparing, it wasn't that like, you know, the stories that I liked were worse than the ones that she liked. It was more like they were just very different. And you could, when you looked at them next to each other, you could tell how different they were. And like, I don't want to get too far into specifics of how that is, but just how personal the decision is for, you know, whether you really love a story or not. And there's a difference between a story being like, a perfectly fine story and even a good story and one that you really, really love and you want to fight for. And so that seeing the intricacies of that difference was very interesting to me because I'd never worked with someone at the top level of that. I had just been a submissions editor and I just passed on stories I really enjoyed. And then, you know, if they got published, great. If not, I wasn't really privy to that part of the conversation of whether it was going to be chosen or not. And I think it's one of the more interesting things for me about the nuts and bolts of the magazine is, you know, now with the second issue I started reading stories like Eliana's gonna love this story, I know she's gonna love this story, and you know you just start to get a feeling for what the other person likes, and that's really, really fun, I think.
I think that actually happened in the first issue too. Like, I think the ones that we published were some that I personally, super personally, didn't enjoy as much. But then I sent it to Coral and she was like, "Oh my God, I love this one." And but I sent it to her because I thought it was a great story. Like the story itself was amazing. It wasn't something that I would read or write like for pleasure, I guess. But that's kind of like the distinction you try to make when you're reading for the magazine. Like, is it objectively a good story? Yes, it's a great story. Is it something that you personally, with your maybe, I mean, even shitty taste, I'd say, would like? No, I mean, I say shitty because we have had that discussion with Coral before, like guilty pleasure. She feels like that doesn't exist. I kind of feel that they do.
I feel like it
So,
shouldn't exist. We shouldn't feel guilty for liking the things we like. We should just like them.
but I try to ignore that in favor of these stories that are just so good. And I mean, and the whole thing for me was like, how do you overcome the fact that all of these stories are so good? Like, how do you pick and choose, like, which one? And it's not even which one is better. It's just which one works better with the theme or which one plays to this certain gist you're trying to go with. Like, it's kind of like a mismatch of things. So personally, for me, it was trying to objectively see what we were choosing, and leaving aside maybe a little of the things that I just personally love, but I know that weren't maybe as fit for the magazine. Because honestly, it all goes down to, does it fit the fit the theme well? Does it work with the other stories? Like, you try not to have two stories that are just like very similar, because it happens. There were a few stories that I really loved, coincidentally, because the themes were just things that I have a thing for, but they were too similar and you can't have both, so you have to choose one. um so yeah, your personal feelings do influence what you choose, but it's also having to do that work of like objectively looking at things like on the more publishing big spectrum of what you're putting together, because it's just 7 stories and you love all of them, or you love so many of them and you find good stuff in all of them, that you just have to pick and choose, sadly.
Yeah, I think the pile we were choosing from was around 25, if I remember. So 25 stories were like the cream of the cream.
Mhm.
And then we knew we could only publish like a certain number of words, and how many words that was going to be was either going to be 6 or 7 stories in that neighborhood.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's the kind of decision you're making at the end between 25 stories you really love, and you can only publish 6 or 7. Um, and it's really really hard, especially when you get to that level, because they're all really really good. And I think sometimes you have to go with what suits the theme, like what Eliana said, and also kind of what stories play off each other, in a way. So like she was saying, you don't want to have, two mermaid stories, let's say, but you do want to have two stories that have maybe a theme that are similar, so that you can, see the differences in how one writer and another writer approaches those same themes. So that's really one of the interesting higher level things you kind of have to do.
Mhm. And as writers, you know how it feels on the other side when you get the rejection, that it was like a close call, and you feel that, oh no, it
For
was
sure.
close. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
I
think,
honestly,
go ahead.
you go ahead. No, that as a writer, I wish I could just email everyone and tell them everything that I loved about their stories. Um, can't I can't do that for everyone, because I'm like, honestly, there are so many few times that I would say no. I just really dislike the story. Like, I can always find something that's good in most stories. Um,
Mhm.
so it's like I wish I could tell everyone, like, I love this from your story, and I mean, and the other side is that that's kind of mean, because I love it but I can't publish it. So it's
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
that's from the writer's perspective.
Yeah, and I think until you sit in the seat where you're deciding those things, you don't realize how agonizingly close it is.
Mhm.
Like when you look at two stories and you're like, I love both of these, but I can't publish every single one I love. What am I going to do here? Am I going to choose this one or this one, and why? And sometimes it comes down to those whys, like why I chose this story over this story was just a gut reaction to something. Or I really, um again, sometimes there's just something about the story at a thematic level. Like My Mother's Hand is one of those stories where when I read it, I was just like, wow, this story not only has a really interesting, it has like a thematic gut punch also, and it has, other things about it that are beautiful too. You learn a little bit about Brazil, you learn, a little bit about uh, cargo boats in the 1800s, just there's lots going on there, and you're like, wow, this story has a little bit of everything. And so that's the kind of thing it comes down to. This thing has 4 things recommending it, this one has 3, I love them both, but this one has 4, and so it's really, sometimes it's really just that juggling act between the different aspects of the story.
Yeah, that's got to be tough. It's bad on the writer end, but on the editor end, yeah, it's like choosing between children or something. Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, and I always say I love all of our story children from issue 1. They are all beautiful in their own way. They're all very different, and there were even more stories that we really, really loved that we wished we could have published. But at the end of the day, you have X number of dollars, and that's all you can do.
Yeah. Well, and Mermaid wants to send them to Mermaids Monthly. Anyway,
Exactly.
so
It's
uh,
Mermaids Monthly.
just quick plug for that. But so moving slightly away then from the specific stories and considerations for that, what are some of the challenges that are unique to starting a bilingual magazine specifically? Obviously, there are a lot of challenges to starting magazines in general, and you can talk about those too. But just like this is an extra layer of difficulty in some ways.
I will start by saying ay 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 ay. I didn't realize how hard it would be to interpret some things in translation. I have worked as a translator. I know how to translate things. I love translating things, but to get it just right, it's like, it goes beyond knowing stuff. It's a lot about gut reaction. It's a lot about getting the feel of things. It's a lot about dealing with intangible stuff, which is always just hard to maneuver, because there are some words that are just very annoying to translate because they have so many meanings in one language, and in the other is just this one specific thing. So
Yes.
you have to work around it, and you have to find a way to get to that point without saying that specific word, because that specific word won't work. And just all those minutia things that go into translating something. and that is as a translator and as the like supervising other people's translations. I mean, all the translators do this an amazing job, but it's also like sometimes it's like coinciding with the same interpretation of the thing. Like there were a few instances where something wasn't correct in the translation, like formally correct, but we wanted that intention to come through. So it's like, well, we don't care if it's not super correct, like if it's not the proper super grammar or perfect way of saying it, but this is what we want to transmit, so this is how we're going to keep it. So it's just making those in the specifically in the translation part, making those decisions that you don't really have like a manual for doing them. It's like winging it, and also like trying to find people to help you. Like thankfully we have Livia, Brenda, and Cristina Jurado as well, who help us with that. And like we couldn't have done it without them, because like their interpretations of stuff are like amazing. And like this is aside from all the other things they do with us, because they're like an integral part of the magazine as well. But specifically for the translation part, it's collaborating with other people and like finding a way around stuff, which I didn't know it would be that hard, because I mean I know fiction, translating fiction is hard because it's essentially a rewrite in the other language, but to get it just right, it's like a little bit have to go a little bit further.
Yeah, I think I have two competing things for this one. So first, what Eliana is saying 100%, there is there's a lot of intricacies in moving from one language to another. And I think what happens there is that you have to really consider author intent in the language that they wrote it in. And that becomes really, really important when you're trying to pick just the right sentence or just the right word that means the same thing. Like we were literally just talking about this today with one story we're translating for the second issue. That you know this is a Spanish story in this instance where the writer used a specific word, and that word doesn't really have any translation in English, and it's very, very specific in Spanish what this means. And so we have to kind of go, well, how close can we get, and how can we, you know, maybe wordsmith the words around it to make it seem like it fits without making it seem awkward. And in this case, this is a word that is used repeatedly throughout the story. So it makes it even more difficult, because you can't just be like, well, we're going to do this one sentence and have it be a little wonky, because this is a word that repeats over and over again. And so, yeah, you run into that a lot, and that's very interesting. And I didn't really know that would happen when we started this all. And the other side of it for me, kind of going back to the organizational stuff, just everything is twofold. So, you know, usually when you're doing a magazine, like in just one language, you have to have a conversation between kind of the author and the copy editor and the overall editor. And there might be 3 people involved. But when you're doing a translation, there's like 6 people involved. And all of the emails back and forth about, well, what about this one word? I don't know about this word. You know, and then you have to go to here, you have to go to the author and the translator and the copy editor and, you know, the second person you're asking about this translation, and you just have to keep going back and forth. And it's really, really so much more, I'm going to say convoluted, but I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean it's really involved. Like you can't just make a decision and be like, well, I'm going to use the word, you know, raccoon or whatever. You have to like have a reason, and you have to be able to explain that reason to other people. And I don't know, I just used the word raccoon because I have a rocket raccoon on my desk, in case anyone was wondering why I used that particular word. He was staring at me. So anyway,
Especially
yeah.
because it's Spanish. I think Spanish is also like an added layer. I mean, obviously every language has its thing, but for me, for Spanish, it's like because we have very different collaborators from different parts. It's like, so does this word mean the same thing in Paraguayan Spanish that it would mean like in Argentinian Spanish, or maybe in Colombia they say it this way, or in Cuba they say it the other way? And it's like, okay, so what word can we find that works for everyone? So it's another layer of finding the right one to say.
Always having to explain, don't tell Cubans about papayas, por favor. Yes. It's like, no. I was actually going to ask about that, so it's good that you brought it up. So related to the previous question, you know, talking about the challenges, but like what has been fun or special about running a bilingual magazine so far?
So in my case, it's been a lifesaver. Just I mean, even if the world wasn't on fire last year, um, it's it's given me like a new purpose of how I approach writing in general. Like as a writer, your goals are always personal. Like you want to publish this, you want to write a story about this, you want to like milestones that you set for yourself or however you approach your own writing career. But with something that's a collective work, like the great thing about it is that you have someone you also work with and for. Like it has this whole new level of accountability that is exactly what I needed in my life in general. Because you work kind of like out of your heart. Because I mean, in my case, because I love Coral and I can't let her down ever. So like it's this boost that I needed to have something to look forward to and like not think about my career in writing or whatever as something for myself rather than something that I'm doing uh, for other people and something that's a lot bigger than me. Like I don't matter really here. Like it's not really my thing. Like I'm just behind the scenes in a way, you know. And I enjoy that a lot more. Like my name is just in the background, doesn't really matter as much. Like the stories are what matter there, and I can contribute to making that happen. So in my case, of the day to day things, the fun thing for me is always just like the reading the stories. Uh, e- Even the tedious things are fun because you're doing it for something that you love so much. So I can't really pinpoint one specific thing. But again, the design stuff is the more fun stuff, like in the tedious stuff, in the tediousness in the day to day. But in general, that's what I love so much about doing it.
I think for me, the most special thing has been working with people we're working with. Like Eliana said, Christina and Libya are amazing, and just hearing their opinions on things has increased my knowledge of, Spanish probably 20-fold. And that's it's probably even more than that. I just picked a number. I feel like I have learned so much from them and from Eliana about all kinds of things that I never would have going into this. I never would have said, "Wow, today I learned about whatever." And just being a part of a team that has such different members to it is really kind of amazing and eye-opening on every level.
That is so cool. Ah. Um, so this is actually also a related question, but before I ask, I'm going to note that in probably about 5 to 10 minutes, we are going to open up the floor to viewer questions. And so if you have any, please put them in the Discord. I am collecting them. So just go ahead, drop them in there, and we'll start with that as soon as we're done with our questions here. So what is something so far that you particularly treasure about the experience? Not just that it was fun or good, but just like something really, maybe one moment that really stood out to you, or something that you had to do that you really wish you hadn't had to do.
All right, I'll go first. I think, and I'm kind of going to crib Eliana's answer from the last one a little bit. I think the experience of reading the stories in the first issue, for me, was really, really um, unbelievable. I didn't have any idea that the wealth of really great stories was out there. Um, and seeing it and having to make those decisions for me was really really precious. Like I'm so proud of that first issue, and I think all of the stories are really amazing in their own ways, and they all really really work well together as a kind of theme together. And I that for me was amazing. And in terms of what I wish I didn't have to do, um, I actually wish we didn't have to reject those other stories we really loved. I mean, because there was a pile of them. In fact, I tease Eliana about this a lot, but like the story I loved the most out of all of the ones I read, and I probably read like 400 stories, like it didn't make it. And there were reasons for that, and they were good reasons, but like story of all of those did not make it into the magazine. And that just like every time I think about it, I'm like, I really, really love that story. I'm gonna go and talk to the author and maybe publish it on the side or something. I don't know, because just I really, really loved it. And yeah, it wasn't a good fit at the time, and there were other concerns, and it's the breaks, but it sucks. It really, really sucks. That and contracts. I hate contracts. They're the worst. but you have to have them,
Yeah, yeah.
So
Eliana?
you asked about one thing you treasure. I don't even remember what it was, but it was like a discussion again, probably just for a word or a phrasing or something that we were editing together. Of what it was before the first issue, where we were trying to find a way to say something. I don't remember what it was, and we disagreed. Like she had an opinion about it, and I had another, and we tried to justify our opinions by examples and whatnot. But in the end, like just so seamlessly, the two of us agreed that even if we didn't agree on it, we were going to go for whatever worked best. And we were both able to see which one worked best, which I think was Coral's version of it. And for me, it was just a key moment to say, well, yeah, we can work together. Like we work together well. Like we have our goals set in mind, and we can talk this out and everything in a way that we both go where the thing works best for the magazine. Like it's our personal things don't matter here, in the sense that no one has an ego. No one, like there's those things that can come up with people when you're working together with stuff and you're really into something and you just want to make it look so good. It's non-existent here. So that was like a groundbreaking moment for me, in the sense that yeah, we can do this. We're gonna be fine. We can work well together.
That's so
um
good.
and one of the things that I don't enjoy, I mean, there are a lot of things that I don't personally enjoy, but I still enjoy doing them. So like the formatting, for example, like I mean, if you asked me if I would format magazines for pleasure, obviously I would not. Especially because it was the first issue, and like there were like these white spaces that had gotten pasted somewhere that I couldn't take out, and I had to do 100 different documents until the white spaces finally were out, because like they showed up on EPUB but not on Kindle. And because it was the first one too, like it was done from the ground up. Like I didn't have a template or anything. I had to do it like from scratch. So
Mhm.
that was the most tedious one, but I still enjoyed it. Like I was there for like 6 hours a day doing it, and like it went by seamlessly. I was tired, obviously, but I will do it again, and I will still enjoy it even if I don't like it.
6 hours. Oh my gosh. Pero I
6 hours in one day. Don't
yeah, it's
ask her
like
how many days in a row she had to do that.
ay ay ay. And again, it's like this is for fun. This is a good like I don't even know. Anyway,
Now ask how
so
much we get paid for that work.
yeah, no, 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 no. No me meto. So also related question. What's something that surprised you about all of this? Something that kind of you weren't expecting to happen?
People's reception, like
Yeah,
for
I
me,
was
that
gonna
was like,
say.
oh my god. Like honestly, that's also one of the best things about it. Like people just being so interested in it and like being so supportive.
Mhm.
I never expected that would be people's reactions. I was like, every single time that we get a subscription, it's like, oh, we got another subscription, and it's not even because it's money. It's because, oh, people like it, people believe in what we're doing. People who review us, like authors who like just want to publish with us. Like, I mean, people's reception. Like, I never ever imagined it would be this good, and that people would be so supportive and so kind, and like people just wanting to help, and I mean, also the people who just volunteer to help. It's like God, gives you faith in humanity.
For sure. I think my answer is the same. I mean, when we were before we even had the first issue, like back in November, we had just finished the Kickstarter. We just realized we were going to be able to do it. And like so we put together the website, and we asked for translators, Spanish to English and English to Spanish translators, contact us. And like we've had, I think it's upwards of 75 translators now that have just come out of, the ether and the internet, and they were just like, I'll translate for you. And just we never expected we were going to have like 5 people who wanted to translate for us. And the same thing with like people who proofread and who wanted to be first readers and all of that stuff. At every turn we've had lots of people coming forward and wanting to help. And we kind of always thought it was just going to be the 2 of us or the 4 of us trying to do everything. And it really quickly became evident that it wasn't going to be that there were more people who were invested in the magazine doing well. And that to me has been really, really beautiful.
Oh no, I'm getting all emotional. It's so no, because it's so beautiful. So now you're through your first year and things are, kind of settling into a group for you potentially. But what would you say is your long-term goal now for the magazine going forward?
Coral?
Do you want me to go first? Okay. I would love to do audio. I think that's my next big thing that I want to do. I would love to have stories read in Spanish and in English. I think that would be, maybe not all of them at first, but just 1 or 2 stories. That would be really great. But neither of us have very much experience in that particular thing, so we'd have to bring somebody else on to do that part, I think. But yeah, that would be my big dream.
And mine is audio and print.
Oh, right, the
Because
print.
I really just need to have it in my hand someday. I'm still a fan of, like, as you can see, print books. And I really just want to see it in print someday. And also one thing, I think we want to incorporate Portuguese too, eventually. Um, because that was in one of our Kickstarter goals, but we didn't make it that far. So someday if we could have, I mean, ideally, always dreaming, have the magazine in 3 languages. That'd be like the top of the top, like what we could do. And
That
so,
would
I mean,
be so cool.
submissions and the stories in the 3 of them. That would be
Mhm.
like the best thing for me.
Yeah, no, get all the people from Brazil and
Yeah.
other countries incorporated. Yes. Oh my gosh, that would be so good. All right, so we have actually reached the end of our official question list, and so I am going to start moving over to questions from the Discord. If you have any questions, viewers, please add them now to the Discord. We will start with, it's actually 2 people's questions, but they're kind of related, so I'm going to read both of them. And you've answered a little bit of this already, but what was the thought process behind story curation for this publication, knowing that Western publishing tends to have more familiarity with certain storytelling modes and tropes, less so with others? Was there a specific aesthetic you hoped to elevate? And the other question, which I feel like is kind of related, how do you describe the voice or style of Constelación? What kinds of stories do you like to read and publish? And was that something you knew right off the bat? Or I feel like you already kind of talked about how that developed as you were going through the slush pile. But so talking about, again, thought process behind story curation, how you deal with like Western publishing trends versus what will come out of Latin America. And then what kind of voice and aesthetic and style have you felt like you're going for here?
Want me to go?
Like if I'm gonna be super honest, I don't really care what the Western standards are anymore. I go for what works in the story. If this story works, if I love the voice, if I love the character, if I love the world that it made me see or understand or anything, and if it works for me. Like
Mhm.
I don't. The good thing about not knowing exactly what the standards are in that sense is that I will not listen to them, and those that I do know, I ignore if the story
Mhm.
works. Because I mean, that was the whole point of Constelación as well, like breaking those standards. Like, what makes a story good? Like, does it have to cater to a certain audience and whatever? And we're not for that. Like, if the story is good and we like it and we feel it fits its theme, um, we go for it. I do realize that some of them might not be what's usually traditionally published in other speculative fiction magazines, but that's great. That's what we want. Um, Not because they're different or anything, but because we love them, and it doesn't matter what if it who it caters to, like a Western audience or like this kind of thing, like prejudged thing. That I don't even know how to describe it without sounding mean, but I don't care what the standards are. We go for what's good.
100%. I think when we went into this knowing that we were gonna feature to a large degree Latino and Latina authors, we knew that the stories wouldn't necessarily adhere to whatever the Western idea of story is as closely. And I think we're fine with that. I mean, we present the stories that we think are excellent and contribute to the theme that we have said the issue is going to be. That's very important also. But I think we're not trying to fit into those molds. There's already plenty of magazines that are doing all that stuff, and that's fine. They're great magazines, but we're doing something different, and you know we want different,
Mhm.
and sometimes that's hard because you know you have challenges when you're looking at stories and you're like, well, these stories are both great. Which one is, you know, I don't know, more a traditional story and which one's not? Uh, that's not one of the things that we balance for. We balance for other things. So, and there was another part of the question. I think I forgot it
Just
already.
voice
Sorry.
style. Has anything
Voice.
emerged in terms of like any kind of overall like stylistic
Um,
stuff?
I think the members of the team are different enough that when we like things, and it's actually become really, really clear to me in the choosing process for this second issue, that the voice is very different from story to story, and I really kind of love it. I was just reading one of the translations today, and I was like, wow, this story is not like anything we have published at all before. This is totally different, and I love that. So I think in terms of voice, we're a little more disparate, probably than some of the others that are around, just because our main core team is 4 people, and we all have different tastes, and we
Mhm.
have different things we like. So,
I also I think personally I always look for things that sound genuine. Like uh, I think all of our stories are genuine in their own way. Like I believe in them. I feel like I can connect to them. Like uh, for some reason I think all of them, if I can describe all of them, that's what I would say. They all sound genuine. They all speak to me in a way. So I think that's my thing too, that I look for mostly. I think even unconsciously, it's not like oh, is this story genuine or not? It's just something that just happens. The feeling that I get after reading them and like working on them, whatever genuine means in a way. I don't know how to describe it. It's just you feel that connection, you know, and sometimes it's just hard to like put into words how that plays out.
All right. So next question, very different topic shift here. What was the process of funding the magazine? You talked about the Kickstarter. So how did you organize the Kickstarter, and are you going to keep using the Kickstarter method going forward to finance?
we are going to try very hard not to. One of our first goals this year is not to have to run another Kickstarter for the magazine part. We might run a Kickstarter for like audio or for print or for something as a different offshoot, but we don't want to have to run a year 2 Kickstarter. That said, depends what happens this year.
Mhm.
And the process was me and Eliana running around asking everyone who knew anything about Kickstarters what we should do for about a month. And then postponing the date we wanted to have the Kickstarter like 3 times because other people were doing Kickstarters. And then hoping like hell that it got funded, and halfway through being sure that it wouldn't fund. And then at the end being so relieved that it funded. That was the quick summary of what happened.
Oh my goodness, so
So
stressful.
in a more detailed way, because I think like if someone's asking, it's probably because they're thinking about doing something. It's have a goal, be very specific about what you're going to do with your goal, down to the last number. Like always aim for more in the sense that you know that you're going to have like 10 or 15% just like from Kickstarter, take it away, or from your bank fees or whatever, and be realistic as well. Like I think we at first we were going to be more conservative. I think is what we were going to ask, because we were going to make it a bit smaller. And it's like, well, no, our ideal version is at least 4 stories, at least this much. So if we're going to do it, we're going to do it like with how we feel it's going to be worth it. Like we could have started with 2 stories as well, and make it a lot smaller and everything. But we were like, well, no, you know what? If we're going to do it, we're going to do it how we envisioned it, and it's just going to be a little bit more. And well, we have to. I mean, if we start slow, it's. I mean, it's the best way to do it actually, to start small. But we were also like, we want this to be bigger, and we're going to go for it. So for anyone thinking of starting a Kickstarter, it's set your goal, see if it's achievable first of all, because I think that was also important from our part. Like, this is a number we can handle. This is something that is doable, not reach out like, and like, I mean, we could have put audio there too, and it would have been mayhem because we would have been able to do it as seamlessly as we did just the magazine, you know. So set your goal, and like try to go for something that's doable. That's the basic of it.
All right, very quick question because we're almost out of time and I still have a lot more questions. Do you ever save a story for a later issue?
We have. In fact, one of the stories that we're going to publish in issue 2 was actually submitted originally for issue 1. And we rejected it at the time, and we sent the writer a note saying, we think this will work better in the second issue. Do you mind resubmitting it for that one? And we ended up choosing it.
Awesome.
So yeah, definitely. We keep our eye on that in the future. If we think, because sometimes it's a real hard choice whether something fits the theme or not. It's a very personal choice whether it fits the theme sometimes. And this particular story did sort of fit the theme of number 1, but it fits number 2 much better. So
would you consider doing an annual anthology in print? Is that a stretch goal?
I can take that one.
We want to.
So there you go. Yes.
Yes.
All right, and then I don't know if we're gonna have time for more than this last question because I feel like this is gonna end up being longer. But what is something you would say to anyone considering sending in a story to the magazine?
I mean, send your stories. I don't know what else to say. I feel like I think sometimes people are very very conservative about where they send their stories to. And they think there has to be, a reason why you should send your story. And I mean, we're doing themed issues, so definitely try to suit the theme. Don't send, I don't know, a superhero story to Myths and Monsters, but like at the same time, our themes are very, very broad, and we've done that intentionally. We want different variations on the themes. We want we don't want every single story to be about like minotaurs or whatever. Like we want them all to be very different. We want them all to speak to each other, but in a outside of each other, kind of. So yeah, I think send your story and see how it goes. There are very specific things, and it's all listed on our submissions page that we don't want. And so please don't send those. But other than that, like, send your story, shoot your shot.
Don't self-reject. That's the worst thing you
Yeah.
can do.
Yeah. All right.
Especially not with us, because we take the weird ones. So send your weird stuff.
So we are out of time, but I wanted to thank you both for such an awesome and amazing interview. And if there are questions in the Discord that you weren't able to get to, so if you want to head in there and check those out, you can. If not, again, thank you so much. Would you mind very quickly telling people where they can find you online besides Constelación, the Constelación website, which I will link in the Discord as well. But Coral, where can people find you online?
Twitter is probably the best place. Coral M.
Eliana?
I will put it in the Discord because it's Eli Marie, but it just has a weird spelling. So Twitter as well.
All right. Thank you both so much.
Should go out and buy Valerie's
Thank you,
books.
Valerie.
Oh,
they're amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, so I am at Valerie Valdez on Twitter. That is with an S and not a Z if you are listening. Valerie Valdez. Thank you so much again, Constelación Magazine. Everybody go subscribe, enjoy, learn some Spanish. Muchas gracias a todo el mundo.
Gracias. Un placer.
Yes.
Gracias a todos.
All right, I'm closing this down now. Bye.